Hello, comrades. Welcome to this special edition of the Communist Forum. We'll be talking about your party. Over 800,000 people have signed up so far. They all won't become members and active members of that, but it's still massive numbers and a massive opportunity for the left in Britain and really internationally. Communists like ourselves, we fight for this party, of course, to adopt a principled Marxist program and the most democratic structures possible. Unfortunately, at the moment, your party at the top is characterized not just by what we might call programmatic timidity and a sort of economism, a lack of decisiveness of Jeremy Corbyn and those around him, but also, I think, a lack of understanding any kind of plan on how to organize this party in a truly democratic way. If we were charitable, we might say this has something to do with those leading it having been in the Labour Party for way too long, and their modus operandi includes leaking things to the press, manipulating people and their opinions, backroom deals, compromises, etc. Some, like Zara Sultana, I do think want to get away from that, but they end up throwing out the baby with the bathwater. She advocates one member, one vote, or MOF, which sounds very democratic, but really is not very democratic when it's used outside branch meetings or other relatively small meetings. If it's applied, for example, to a founding conference, it necessarily means what we've called a Zoomocracy, i.e. the members click yes or no, or maybe abstain from a list of pre-selected options at home on their computer. There's a bureaucrat's wet dream and a democrat's nightmare. Both speakers tonight reject this idea, and we're discussing what communists and socialists should be saying and doing about the first steps to the promised foundation conference in November. We're starting tonight with comrades Max Shanley, who has developed the idea that delegates at this founding conference should be chosen by sortition, i.e. a form of lottery. Jack Conrad, our second speaker, opposes this idea. We'll hear from both for about 20-25 minutes, and then we open up for debate and questions from the floor. Max's camera is not working, so you'll be seeing Jack and myself on the screen while Max is talking. Over to you, Max. Thanks for coming along.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Just before I begin, it's a delight to be here with you all this evening. And I've not had the chance to debate anybody face to face, or rather over the internet with actual voices rather than type words in a long time. I just want to say one thing before I begin, and that is that I am not a complete advocate for sortition in the long term. It's purely a short-termist measure. After that, I believe in elected delegates. So anyway, I'll begin. So for the outcome of the founding conference to have any democratic legitimacy, it has to be representative of the near 800,000 people who have registered an interest in the party by signing up to its mailing list. Several party branches have been launched by activists up and down the country, and their existence is fantastic. It's a living testament of the energy, initiative, and good faith of ordinary people determined to give our party life from below. These groups have worked very, very admirably, holding public meetings and so on, often with little more than their own time, resources, and determination, in the hope of bringing people together and organising a new political force that can turn this country upside down. Yet, sadly, their ability to reach wider layers of support has been structurally limited. The refusal by those at a national level who control the data rights of the mailing list has meant that these party branches have had to rely almost entirely on pre-existing activist networks and social media. While these have great value, they can't then connect themselves to the great mass of people who signed up in the hope of genuine participation. This is by no means the fault of the local organisers. Their work deserves to be recognised. I think it's excellent, and it's an example of the first shoots of grassroots democracy in action, but it would be unfair to them and unrepresentative of the whole movement to imagine that in the current conditions, these branches alone can form the democratic foundation of a delegate system. To do so would heap an impossible task on the shoulders, onto their shoulders, while letting those who withhold access off the hook. So, what is the alternative? Now, there's a couple of alternatives at play. There's one whereby you have a sort of free for all. Anyone can register to turn up on the day and so on. That also means if it is a hybrid conference of the type that is currently being proposed, that anyone who registers can then vote online. Now, the problem with that is that that will descend into one of two things. The first is that the in-person meeting will likely become a room packing exercise for small groups. And that will most likely lead to chaos. We've all been to meetings that have been packed, purposefully packed by people. At the same time, running the conference in that fashion will also create a situation whereby the decisions taken in the room can easily be overruled by the good people at home. So it doesn't matter the high quality of the level of debate and deliberations in the room and the decisions that are taken in that room, because they'll just be overruled, or they can be overruled in theory. Whether or not that would be the case in practice is neither here nor there. The alternative is to send delegates from these proto-party branches, but as I've said, the problem is that they don't have access to the data, so the number of people involved is very small, and I think we can all agree that there would be some questions over uh, legitimacy of them sending those delegates. But ignoring that entirely, I think it's just a fact that we all have to accept that those at the top have no interest whatsoever of actually recognising these proto-party branches. Otherwise, they would have reached out by now. So in that case, we can all agree that something has to be done, but what is to be done exactly? So Comrade Edmund Griffiths has proposed the use of sortition. Now, Edmund is an advocate for sortition more widely. I'm not. I believe in elected delegates, but in the absence of any other way of doing this that would have any kind of legitimacy, it does seem to me that sortition provides a route whereby we can ensure the greatest amount of equal rights for participation in conference events, and the conference itself actually being practical, and the debates, discussions, and deliberations in the room actually mattering. So what I propose is that we have an open registration period online for entry into the sortition pool for a nominal fee. I think purely from the state that should be set no higher than £3, since that was the fee required for someone to become a registered supporter of the Labour Party in 2015 and vote for the vote in the leadership election. So this registration period needs to be open as soon as possible, publicised widely, not just via the email list, but there should be a press release or something to that effect. And this period should exist for 2 weeks to ensure the maximum amount of time reasonable for anyone who would wish to participate to register their interest. After that date, the data should be then handed over to a neutral third party, such as the Sortition Foundation, who can then conduct the election of delegates and alternates without the risk of bureaucratic wrangling or people being handpicked by those from above, and the entire process and methodology for doing so should be transparent, and a report written by said third party should be published online at the same time as those elected by sortition are informed of the result. If elected, these delegates would then have the right to attend the conference in person, and their attendance should then be supported by the crowdfunding of universal travel and accommodation bursaries to ensure anyone, regardless of means, can participate alongside free professional childcare at the founding conference itself. If possible, that would mean that we book hotel rooms, coaches would be hired to ferry people from regional hubs to where the conference is being held, even discounted train tickets being negotiated with rail networks and whatnot, and the rest of the conference proceedings should then be crowdfunded as well. As I've said before, and as has already preliminarily been announced, this conference should take place in November. It should take course over a long weekend. I think there should be a Thursday evening session to confirm and potentially amend the agenda and set out to those delegates the procedures of the founding conference at a sort of practical level. And then there should be full conference business beginning from the Friday right the way through to the Sunday afternoon. So each sortition delegate would be equal to each other. That would fulfill the idea of one participant, one vote, which is, I think, ultimately what Comrade Sultana has been arguing for. I think she's fluffed it a bit with language by saying OMOV. But in conversations I've had with people who are close to her, when I put forward the idea that actually what we want is one participant, one vote, they've been fairly open to it, which makes me think she would be as well. And, this conference would then decide the party's name, structure, principles, strategy, any other forms of policy, and it would elect the party leadership. I'd like to see a collective leadership rather than instilling power into the hands of one man or one woman. But then we have the problem of who gets to decide what is up for debate. And this is where actually I think we can lean in to the already announced promise that it's going to be a hybrid conference of in-person and online. So I think those at the top, because let's face it, they're the ones with the access to the data and the funds and everything like that. So it's going to be them doing it, whether we like it or not. I think what they need to do is create an online platform. And the purpose of this platform is so that any registered participant, not just the ones who've been elected by sortition, can submit motions, amendments, proposals, strategy papers, all sorts of documents to be put up for consideration at the conference itself. These would require valid signatures of, say, 200 other registered participants, and they would then be voted upon as part of a priority ballot by all registered participants, not just the sortition delegates, prior to the conference. And that would then set the agenda of the conference itself. You would also have a nomination platform for individual candidates for the leadership and so on, and they obviously would also require a set number of signatures. Then hopefully what would then happen, and what really should happen, is that there should be active encouragement from above for the creation of working groups from below. And through that, ideas and strategies can be thought out collectively before being submitted to registered participants for consideration alongside digital and in-person public assemblies, where particular topics can be openly debated for and against before the cut-off date for consideration. I believe that this creates a dynamic of collective participation right from the beginning, uh, in as practical a manner as possible. But also, this is a great opportunity to engage for communists and socialists to engage in mass political education at every stage of development of ideas for the new party. So I think this guarantees people the right for equal participation, equal right for participation. But obviously, there's then the question of, well, what about if the people who have been sortitioned don't represent the views of all registered participants? So that's where I think we should have 10% of the people in the room who will be factional observers. Prior to the conference, you would have a sort of founding conference faction registration period where people can set out their political platform and what motions they're going to be supporting and everything like that. And they would then also have to get X number of valid signatures for support, but that's just so that their names would then be put forward for election by all registered participants on the basis of party lists. So, for example, the CPGB could set up a communist platform and you could put forward 10 names, and then there would be a vote by single transferable vote using the Droop quota, because that's the most proportional version of STV that gives the most pluralistic outcome. And then based on the percentage of the vote you get, you would have X number of representatives on the conference floor. So you can send your best fighters and best debaters there to make the case for X, Y, or Z position, put forward X, Y, Z arguments, and so on. In the run up to the conference, I think we need to be having meaningful online deliberations. So that will require multiple online debates, probably to be organised centrally and probably to achieve the biggest draw, either chaired by Corbyn or by Sultana themselves in the run up to conference, in which all pre-registered factions should be able to make the case for their proposals and answer any questions other registered participants might have for them. So that election of factional observers by registered participants should also be conducted by an independent and neutral third party, purely because, look, we know what some of the people at the top are like, and they will try and manipulate the result if they have the chance. So I think this way is probably the only way in which we guarantee a truly representative conference that has the widest amount of legitimacy. And more than that, it would ensure the widest possible participation of any founding conference of a political party in British history. And it would be incredibly hard for those from above to actually try and manipulate things. So yeah, that's my case. I look forward to hearing what Jack has to say now.
Thanks very much, Max. Over to you, Jack.
That was interesting. I mean, I have read your stuff. Let's begin with your last statement. It would be incredibly hard to manipulate your array. I think it'd be incredibly easy to manipulate, to tell the truth. But let me really begin, I suppose, at the beginning. I don't think, at least from my angle, I don't think the aim should be to represent in some statistical sense. I think this is the wrong approach. I think that what parties are about, what organization is about moving forward. And I mean, I'll give you an example, Max, just as a thought experiment, that in Russia, I know we're harking back and we always go on about Russia, but I'm going to go on about Russia. 1917, February, there you are. The Tsar has been toppled and the Soviets have been formed. Lenin's not back. Kamenev and Stalin aren't back. And some bright spark says, hey, Soviets, what about a lotocracy? What about sortition? Why do we want all of these factions? Why not actually represent the average? And why not choose people to decide the Soviet policy by lot? Now that would get you, I'm not a mathematician, but my understanding is that for 800,000 people, all you need is 384 people that gives you a 95 percent of certainty that you'll get your this is the equivalent of getting 800,000 people, I was about to say in a room, but you get the point. But I mean, what would the result be of the Russian Revolution if, for example, out of your 384 delegates, you had, say, for example, 5 Bolsheviks, but not 5 Bolsheviks, like Lenin and later Trotsky, Kamenev, Zinoviev, Stalin. You didn't have them, but you had your average Bolshevik. The thought to me is just risible. That isn't the way forward. Great when it comes to juries. I'm sure you've served on a jury. We're asked, are they guilty? Yes or no? And I've been on juries of where potentially you can debate with your other 11 jurists, not just for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, but for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, if necessary, just to decide yes or no, right? But you, Max, you're saying that we can get together people who by definition are going to be politically inexperienced. And what we do is we put them in a room over a long weekend and we present them with principles, program, leadership, and strategy to choose. You have this scheme where, factions can present their documents. I mean, I'm imagining each participant here walking around with several foot of documents to carry around. The idea that they're going to be able to master what's in front of them. The idea that they're going to be come to an informed decision, I think is naive. The reality is precisely that what you'll have, because it's a necessity, is experts, and the experts are going to come from those you say, we know what some of these people are like. We know what these people are like, right? And what they would want is something along the lines of the Labour Party, but led by them, something along the lines of Mélenchon's party, but led by them, something along the lines of maybe Momentum. I don't think that this actually represents a viable way forward if we want to take this thing forward in a positive way. And I think it's the wrong approach, because I think you're selling a principle. So you're right. You just stand for sortition for this one founding conference, because we've got very limited time span. Ed, on the other hand, is a sortitionist, and he's critically supporting you. I'm sure you're very grateful for that, but precisely because he sees it as a principle. I think it's quite conceivable. I'm not saying it will happen, but it's quite conceivable to me that those above who you don't trust, quite rightly, will say, hey, here's a good idea thought of by Max and Ed. We'll take it. Why not? Because they will get to choose actually in practice who the experts are, who the chairs are. They will manipulate the 384 delegates, or not delegates, randomly chosen members. We on the left, you know, not the CPGB, but we on the left, you know, again, I've just used a throwaway figure, you know, maybe I'm being over generous, but if we say there's 10,000 comrades on the organized left, and that's being incredibly generous, we together would get 5 delegates. We might object, and the chair turns around and says, I'm not taking your objection. What are we going to do about it under those circumstances? So you've sold the principle. You've sold a principle that those above can easily take hold of, just like the OMOF zoomocracy, and use it for their own purposes. Okay, so what's my alternative? What's the alternative being put forward by the CPGB? It isn't perfect. We readily admit that. What we're saying is the branches need to be demanding those lists. And nowadays with communication, you know, with the internet, X, social media, you can get, even without those lists, you can get to people. And precisely, we need to be building the organization now, and we need to be building it from below. We need not only to be building branches, but why can't those branches, for example, in London, come together? In Scotland, they could come together. In Wales, Yorkshire, you know, Cornwall. Why can't they come together? And if they can come together on a regional basis, why can't they come together on a national basis? Now, I've been in conferences packed with the SWP. I'm well aware that various organizations out of this, 10,000 organized left will attempt to pack such a conference. It's a risk we take. We readily admit that, but this is the right way forward. And all I can tell you with the SWP, from looking at Socialist Worker and reading, party notes, they're actually fearful of putting their comrades into this organization and hearing the voices of other comrades on the left. They actually want to keep the SWP isolated. They want to actually shield their members from the likes of you and me, because what we're arguing for isn't just a democracy. What we're arguing for is a program. And what we're arguing for, precisely as you've put forward, Max, something at least organizationally like the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, we had a comrade speaking last week. I've been reading up the events in Chicago. And what our comrade told us is that Chicago was dominated by the organized left. And what is interesting is that the so-called majority caucus found itself in a minority. And that would be my expectation, actually. If we have branches electing delegates, for example, we would fight for it on an STV a system, just like in the United States with the DSA. So yeah, the CPGB certainly couldn't dominate such a conference. But what is interesting in such a conference, at least there's the possibility of minorities, one acting as the kingmaker under certain circumstances, like, for example, in the DSA, not that I support them, Reform and Revolution has acted in that center fashion. But the point isn't so much about this is the role we want to play. The role we want to play is simply to turn around to comrades like yourself and say that a delegate conference is possible. It's doable. It's the right way of going about it now, not just after a founding conference. Because if we precisely sell the pass, it might be too late. So if we end up with, which is what I fear, something along the lines of momentum, or for perhaps your system, what chance have we then got? And the answer is we've got absolutely no chance. So if you look at the comrades, for example, in MUG, the Marxist Unity Group, I mean, they're reporting, wow, we've really been growing over the recent period. We've got over 100 members. Well, given that the DSA is what, I don't know, 60,000, 80,000 members, if they were chosen by Sortition, they simply wouldn't appear. And that's why exactly the so-called majority caucus, so-called because they're no longer a majority, tried to win the convention in Chicago to some version of an OMOF Zoomocracy. They failed. Thank God they failed. Now, I'm not holding up the DSA, politically as my example, but precisely the DSA with its delegates elected on STV system, with its caucuses, with its chapters, precisely gives us, how I should put it, the pool within which to swim in and argue. And not only argue with the mass, that's extremely important, but also argue with each other. To win over comrades from the SWP, to win over comrades from SPEW, from the CPB, from the RCP, and other such organizations. So yes, we should be arguing, demanding that we get the list. That's surely easy. That's surely something that we can actually be clamoring for. There's more chance of that actually than those above not manipulating a conference that is chosen by Sortition. They will manipulate it, and they will get the results they want, not what we want. Now, we certainly won't get what we want in the CPGB. But if we give in on a delegate conference now, my fear is that we won't stand a chance. That doesn't mean we give up on the project, but I think it is worthwhile fighting now. It's worthwhile fighting in branches, not only for the list, but for branches to actually organize together in regions. And it's worthwhile making the argument that the branches ought to take a lead from our misleadership above. I think I've done my 20 minutes there, Tina.
Yes, thanks very much, comrade. Comrades, if you want to ask a question, make a contribution, please click raise hand and I can make you into a panelist. Max, I wonder if you want to already reply to Jack while we're waiting for comrades to raise their hand. I mean, particular the question, of course, the fact that there aren't any branches yet, the fact that there aren't any delegates, is not a mistake, is it? It's on purpose. They're not handing out signature lists, etc. Do you see the danger if you if you let this happen now for the first time, if you think and if you support this actually a system of sortition, choosing the name, for example, by online poll has been happening at the moment, that you're setting a precedent that then will be carried on. You could say this was really successful. Hundreds of people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people voted on the question of the name, etc. Do you see that as a danger, that if you support it now, it will be carried on into the future? And anything else you wanted to reply to Jack, if you want to do that now, and then we can open the floor.
Yeah, no, look, there is a danger, but there's always a danger, right? And the problem we've got is that I personally think it is very unlikely, however much these local groups demand, that they will be given access to the data. We saw that with Momentum. Those who hold the keys, don't want to unlock the door. And so it is a danger, but this entire process is full of dangers, right? And we are really in uncharted territory. So I know, comrades in the weekly worker like to criticise those who, the idea of following your nose and whatnot. But in this situation, I kind of feel that we have to follow our gut. And, my gut is saying that for the founding conference, at least, sortition works. I'm in agreement with the rest of you. After that, it should be elected delegates from local party groups. But I just can't see that happening. What I can see happening is those at the top hand picking people to be in the room, right? So I think at least with sortition, I have a bit more. I don't know. I think I think that the overwhelming majority of the people who will sign up to be registered participants at the conference will be the most politically developed and active comrades. I just think that. I've got no evidence to support that, right? But I just have a feeling that that's going to be the case. And yeah, no, that's all I really have to say on that. I'm in full agreement with Jack about the actual type of organisation that we need to have. I'm a big proponent of the DSA model. I don't agree with all of DSA's politics, but as an organisational form and their modes of democratic deliberation and everything like that, I think it is something to aspire to. But yeah, I just think the party conference is going to go one of two ways. It's going to be hand-picked delegates, and I've already heard through conversations with friends who are more in touch with what's going on above that's what some people really want. Hand-picked delegates of favoured leftists and assorted figures from the trade union bureaucracy. Or the other option is that okay, we run the risk of it being random by having sortition, but it's far better than what the alternative is. And like I said, because I think that the vast majority of those who are going to register to be participants in the first place are going to be our most politically developed comrades, things would probably turn out more favourably for us than we might imagine. And actually, I think we could end up with a conference floor that is far less wedded to the cults of personality around Corbyn and the parasocial relationships that people have developed with his associates. But I may well be wrong, and if I'm proven wrong, I hold my hands up and say I was wrong. I'm not going to go into denial or anything like that. And I know it is a risk. I know it's a massive risk, but sometimes he who dares wins.
Thanks, comrade. John, please, John Ryan.
Hi, John here in Cork in Ireland. A couple of things I could go along with both Max and Jack. First of all, if you look at basic communications, there's been some changes in the last few years with the internet. On the one hand, it's great for getting statistics quite simply and cheaply, if you like. And for instance, you can have 14 or 20 issues that you can decide to rank, get people to rank them to their first five most important issues, or even the name, the whole thing about the party name. You can have, 45 suggestions, and you can reduce that to 4 or 5, which would be a way of getting on with things. I think, but more importantly, I think there should be a conference, and I actually think, even though it's very much a mainstream, even a government Parliament thing that we had in Ireland. You sometimes have a progressive result, not unintentionally, I think. There was actually People's Assembly set up by the government, and the idea was to talk coming up to the gay rights referendum and the abortion referendum, for instance. And what you had is you had your random number of people. You had people coming in, experts, legal, medical, the fine details. So people could bring out a good report, and it actually came out with very good reports, and very ordinary people were able to see through the best bits of that. And there also has been one since on the environment and on homelessness done as well, which I'm sure the government won't do anything about, but they actually were well put together reports. So I actually think that the structures of the party should be done differently from policy. I think that you could do the structure based on something like that, your 343 people or whatever Jack was talking about. If you have a number of people with, understand structures very well, if they put it to ordinary people like that, they can actually come to a very mature response, without too much trouble. I think policy development has to be for branches. That's how the main structure would develop. But I think the other thing I forgot about the computers was that there is restrictions now about personal security and all that sort of stuff. So the traditional idea of a branch where sort of everybody knew everybody, and it was easy enough to get contacts and where people's backgrounds and stuff like that. You can't really do that anymore. But yeah, I think you could get the structure done by the ordinary mass, if you want to call them that, and then after that, it'd be much more important to have delegates after that for policy development. That's what I thought.
Thank you, comrade. We've got quite a few people now with their hands up, so please try and keep it quite short. And Jack and Max, if you want to come back in, just either raise your hand or send me a quick message. Ian.
Just a few little things. I think sortition in the current context will be an absolute gift to the bureaucracy, really. I think what it will mean is that, that they'll be able to, on the basis of it being fair and democratic, ensure that people who are activists, who are already politically involved, can therefore be excluded, and they would want that. I mean, most of the people who will be at the leadership of this party, whatever it's called, and my hope is that it has at least the word socialist in the title. My preference is for communist, but hey ho. But I think that's exactly what sortition would aim to do, is to actually make sure that it's not activists that become involved in parties and branches and so on. Now, from my experience of being in the Labour Party, it's the activists that are involved there. It's exactly I mean, my experience of momentum was of hundreds of people joining up. I mean, I remember going to meetings in Durham, and hundreds of people, and people who are young and interested and wanting to take this further. And where did they all go? When you actually got into your branches, none of those people turned up. And if we're not careful, I think that's what we're going to have. So the problem with sortition, of course, is that it could also select people who really don't give a toss, who aren't really going to get involved, who aren't really motivated. They put their name in, they wanted to join. Yes, of course, yes, I'd like to be a delegate or something. But actually, when it comes down to it, I'm perhaps not that interested after all. And I've seen that with my own eyes. I think the other thing is, from the outset, when we're thinking about branches and so on, we should think ahead of elections, because if we're not going to stand for election, then there's really no point. And we should stand for election, obviously, on a principled socialist platform. Now, if we're going to do that, then we should form these branches along electoral lines. I mean, in the Labour Party, obviously, you had branches that were usually along council wards, and they would send delegates to the constituency. Now, we don't have to mimic everything, but so my constituency, for example, in County Durham is Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor. There's a clue in the title. These are the two biggest towns. So it seems to make sense to have, if I can get two meetings going, one in Newton Aycliffe and one in Spennymoor, then they're geographically apart. But for them each to send delegates to a kind of a constituency type of meeting would be a start, and that's a beginning for how we could then manage maybe something for the northeast, and it's an opportunity actually then to bring other comrades in. The other thing about it is, who's going to be interested? Who's going to be joining up? It is going to be people who've been through the Labour Party. So let's at least present them with structures that are familiar and which have some kind of sense in terms of. I mean, one of the things that struck me when I was in Momentum was that there were other types of constituency that wanted to have a say. So a constituency around lesbian and gay rights and so on. And obviously we have to find a way of accommodating that. And that's all to the good. But at the same time, we need to work on. Sorry, yes, I will round up. My point is that we also have to have something that people are familiar with and are not going to feel excluded from. If people say turn up and they be presented with, oh, would you like to go into the sortition? Who knows? Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, we've got quite a lot of people with their hands up, and we've got two main speakers who want to come back. Rafal, please.
Hello, comrades, if you can hear me. So my questions or contributions are, so first of all, Max's argument for sortition, unlike Comrade Ed's, is that it is something that we should consider as expedient because the conference is in such short order and we don't have time to organize delegate elections that are going to be representative. However, I'm interested in his thoughts on how that's going to be affected if this conference is not in fact going to end up being in November if it's pushed back. Second of all, while I understand and I find it quite compelling, the argument for sortition in general, as inducing a broad campaign of political education among the membership by providing a strong incentive for organizations to disseminate their platforms as far and wide as possible. I do worry that especially in these conditions of expediency and rushing towards this founding conference and maximizing our chance of success in a representative conference, it might be somewhat counter-mobilizing, precisely because with this invisible leadership of Labourite bureaucrats that don't want us anywhere near this party or having any influence on it, we have very limited means of actually exerting pressure on them. We can say we want delegate elections, and we can say we want sortition, but how do we actually compel this to be in any way adopted for this conference? Now, the way I see it, the only way we can actually exert pressure on Corbyn and the people around him is through the rapid organization of spontaneously organized branches of people across the country forming branches without being induced by the leadership from above. Only by making a show of strength and mobilizing people can we actually hope to exert pressure by putting the leadership in a situation where they can't hope to be seen as legitimate while discarding all this grassroots activity. And I think that since we already, to have any influence on the founding conference, are going to have to organize these branches, we might as well be aiming towards delegate elections at branches, since both for us to have any influence at all already presupposes us being in a position to have legitimate delegate elections. That's the way I see it. Whereas sortition, not necessarily, but I could see it having a demobilizing impact if the predominant argument on the organized left becomes we should be arguing for sortition, then people on the ground will sort of be waiting to be sortitioned, rather than going to branch meetings and organizing them and trying to build them up as much as possible. So I think that perhaps actually expedience means we should be straying towards delegate elections rather than towards sortition. Excuse me. Although I'm very sympathetic to sortition in general, I think that it would be good for party culture and the democratic culture on the left in this country, and beyond, for mechanisms like sortition to be introduced. That I think there's a place in party organs for bodies chosen by lottery, supervisory functions, and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thanks, comrade. Yeah, this is a good point you make there, but we should just go ahead and do our delegates as well, which is some branches have already done. Andrew Feinstein told our proto branch in Sheffield to elect delegates. It shows that there are differences on top, which I'm sure that he doesn't speak for all of your party, but things are very much in flux. So we're pushing, and things are changing by pushing, isn't it? So we shouldn't just accept what is, but help remake it. Andy, please.
Hello, comrades. Thanks, Max. That was an interesting. I believe you've obviously spent some time thinking about the mechanics of it all. I have to say, I do agree with Jack. I think in the end it would be something of a bureaucrat's wet dream, because it strikes me as something which they could easily manipulate. I think, obviously, well, what I picked up was that the driver around this was distrust of the leadership, specifically, the coterie around Corbyn and splits there, and that's understandable. But actually, if we want to hold the leadership to account, actually, within your party or any other organisation, actually, we need to give the activists their head. We need to give them the tools and the ability to actually hold the leadership to account. And it's actually the activists need to be the ones who are in the conference, challenging the leadership, because they have the ability to do so. So actually, if we want to have a situation where we can hold the leadership to account, to stop them doing what we think or suspect they will be wanting to do with this party, actually, it's the activists that we need to be relying on and pushing to be at that conference. I do have a question. You mentioned something about, again, I think this is a sign of your suspicion around the leadership, that the sortition process will be overseen by a third party. Now, again, I have serious concerns about handing over membership information to a third party, in much the same way as the Labour Party NEC was talking about having a third party, an external party coming in to deal with disciplinary matters. Who, can I ask, what organisation or individual do you see as this third party, this reliable arbitrator, who will then process this sortition exercise in order to produce the results that you would have confidence in? I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Andy. Comrade Andy Jones.
Hi, hello. I guess I wanted to say that I think the discussion seems a bit like elitist, as if we know better than the rest of the membership. And I didn't really, I guess I disagree with that, because obviously we have our own organizations and we have a build-up of theoretical knowledge and so on and so forth. But, we've not seen that much success, in the past, few decades. So I wonder if maybe there is an argument that if we send, quote unquote, regular people to the conference, they may have ideas that we wouldn't have. So I just don't think we should just assume that because of our theoretical grounding, we should know better than them. And, I also feel like obviously there's the opportunity for abuse with the one member, one vote, Zoomocracy type voting. But I also think it could be, very, motivating for people to feel like they have some kind of impact. And, I also think that if we only put decisions to, delegates or, people who are able to attend the conference, or whatever kind of thing where they have to physically be there, it's a bit kind of exclusionary for the vast majority of the population who aren't able to take like a few days to go to London, to go to a conference. And, you know, I just feel that's excluding people, and I just think that's a bad thing. And we should consider that, you know, we may not know best, the delegates may not know best, and that we should listen to the wider voice of the organization. Okay, I guess that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yes. Mike.
2 points. The first is I think that we have to proceed on the basis that Max is essentially saying he doesn't trust the current, whoever the hell, the mysterious proto-leadership. We don't trust the mysterious proto-leadership. We've got an additional reason for wanting not to for mistrusting the mysterious proto-leadership is that we've seen the operation in Momentum. Secondly, we've seen the operation, not only seen the operation in Momentum, it's also the case that we've seen the exact same sort of operation of fully controlled by legal ownership of the asset, of the names, the band data, etc., 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 in Podemos in Spain, in the La France Insoumise, and indeed that comrades think of La France Insoumise, people at the centre of this project think of La France Insoumise as a positive alternative. But what we've actually had out of La France Insoumise is, first, La France Insoumise does really well, displaces the Socialist Party, then the terrible threat of the far right, just as actually we've got debates about whether your party will let Reform UK form the next government if it gets a big vote. Terrible threat of the far right. La France Insoumise is persuaded to give up a large number of seats which it won from the Socialist Party back to the Socialist Party for the sake of an electoral bloc against the far right. And surprise, surprise, once the Socialist Party's MPs have been elected to the French Parliament, they vote with the centre-right and the Conservatives to support a government actually of one of the smaller minorities. It's a Gaullist of the I can't remember the off the top of my head the name of the party. It's one of the Gaullist parties, which is smaller than the Macronists and smaller than the Rassemblement on the far right. But it's so the point is simply we are looking at, we've got excellent reasons to expect that that's the project. And then the question is, it's not, can we, on the state of affairs as we are now, defeat that? No, we can't. It would be extraordinarily surprising if we could, with the extraordinarily scattered far left, the SWP will almost certainly want to ingratiate themselves with Corbyn by supporting such a scheme, and so on and so on. It's very unlikely that we can defeat it. What we can do is project the ideas of an alternative way of doing things, putting forward an alternative political democratic way of doing things. And that's more that's actually more productive. And I think the comrade who just spoke, Comrade Andy Jones, the problem with this stuff, it's, okay, this is the standard bleeding argument, but what we get is Blairite operations, or the operations of Momentum. And it's what it is, it's plebiscitary. All of these proposals are proposals for plebiscitary democracy. And the history of plebiscitary democracy is Louis Bonaparte, Adolf Hitler, Ayatollah Khomeini, the AV referendum, David Cameron's 3 fraudulent referendums, the AV referendum, the Scots referendum, the Euro referendum. They're all frauds, and all of these things. Because it works in the way in which it does, it has the effect of actually demobilizing people, and it's an argument for demobilizing people. That I think we should argue is a reason for arguing against it. Now, one other thing about sortition, it only actually works if it's compulsory. Jury service is a duty. Sortition worked for the election of parish constables and ward constables and stuff like that. When it was a legal duty, you have to do it. You get landed on to do it. You have to do it. Tough shit, sunshine. If it's not, then it becomes just it's just a much more arbitrary way of selecting unelected delegates. That's it.
Sorry, thanks, Mike. Next, Jack, and then Max, if you want to come in.
Yeah, just a small point, Tina. There's no voting going on the name. They're sort of canvassing people. But I think you're right that this is clearly, I think, a prelude to doing some sort of omocracy, zomocracy, or something along those lines. Either way, I just on the level of statistics, look, Max, okay, people register. That doesn't mean that if you then randomly select people, you're going to get the most active and the most developed. You're not. You're going to get an average by definition, 95% certainty. So out of 800,000 people, for example, what's my figure? I can't remember. Is it 384? Is all you need for that sort of degree of certainty. You can either, halve it, double it, but it's an average. It's not the most. The most you're going to get out of 10,000 who are the most advanced. That might be an elitist view. In that case, I'm an elitist. I think some people do know more than others. If I broke my leg, the last thing I'm going to do is walk out the door, pick the first random person I come across and say, oh, you fix my leg. No, I'm going to go over to the hospital and try to get the best possible medical treatment I can get. And that applies to politics. I'm sorry, but if you take the left, I think it's got an appallingly low level of culture. I readily say that. But compared with your average comrade on the left that I meet on a Palestine demonstration, they've clearly got a higher level of consciousness, a higher level of politics. But it's up to branches to choose. That would be my argument. And it's up to them to recall, to be accountable. You voted that way, did you? We're not having you again. So, I'm not claiming that delegates are the end, the nth and perfect. Of course, it has to be tested out. It's a question of establishing the principle that's important. I'm sure you're right, Max. The chances are, if we have our delegate conference, there will be loads of SWPers. I don't think they can get a majority, but that's to be seen. But let's have them accountable to branches, right? So they come back and they vote for a loose umbrella. Well, sorry, using an Anglo-Saxon under those circumstances. No, we don't want you as a delegate. You're just putting the SWP first. That's my version of it. Now, in terms of manipulation and all the rest of it, this is precisely the argument. Max, I'm repeating, I know, but you want a conference to decide its principles, program, leadership, strategy from scratch. You want a situation where various factions can present their literature. I've said, that the chances are that the average delegate will be, loaded with 2 feet of documents to carry, let alone read, let alone absorb. I mean, if you talk about a party, I'll give it again as an example. The real foundation of the Social Democratic Labour Party in Russia. I mean, that conference, that Congress took 2 months. If you read the minutes, they're painstakingly going through the rules. They're not just doing, you know, what I think John Ryan is recommending, you know, which is fine for a jury, yes or no, right? We want this rule, we want that rule. Okay, you know, if you get a choice of one or the other, okay, but this is the point, that life is complex. You know, life precisely says, yeah, but I don't like that clause. That clause is monstrous. And you want to put an amendment, you haven't got the time. And they're not going to give you the opportunity. So I agree with you. I mean, I don't approve of the RS system, but I can see the point. Do you want gay relationships to be illegal? Yes or no? Okay, get your average person along, 400 of them. There's the experts. Who chooses the experts? I don't know. But there you are, and they go, yes. Well, what a good result. But what about precisely a party program? What about party statutes? What about a party strategy? What about a party election approach to the Greens, the Labour left? These are complex questions and precisely require us to become experts, right? Us, right? And therefore, yes, you know, we need to master those politics. Can anyone master those politics? Yes, but given a lot of time, given a lot of effort, just like becoming a doctor or a nurse, you know. So we need precisely people who've got knowledge and people who've got experience. And as long as we can elect them and as long as we can recall them, that's the best way to proceed. Okay. Yeah, look, let me just finish. Mike went on about sortition and being compulsory. Okay, so under communism, under full communism, I mean, I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying that under full communism, maybe it's a way of going about things. But I don't think that under full communism, you know, when it came to complex questions, you would do it over a weekend. Right? This is my argument, that precisely your communist future person will be precisely debating this sort of complex questions out in the complexity that complex questions require. So maybe they require a week, maybe they require 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Precisely under those circumstances, they can come to an informed decision. Great. But I also notice that, you know, in the British jury system, they have an election of a foreman. When it came to ancient Athens, you know, my understanding is they elected, is it 9 presidents? So there's still election there, but that's for the future. Jury is great. The Athenian Revolution, this was a great gain for those below. But in terms of going in and, you know, not holding the leadership to account, but becoming the leadership. We don't want it automatic that Corbyn is the leader, that Sultana is the deputy, and our shadowy 6 interim executives become the executive. We want to elect people, right? And whether that's, you know, John Rees or bloody Alex Kalinikos or you know, Hannah Sell or whatever, that should be our way to proceed. And, you know, if I had a vote, I doubt I'd get one. Okay, Jeremy, you'll become, you know, the party leader as a nominal, you know, a nominal position, you know, honoring him, you know, for his years of dedication. But I wouldn't want him on the leadership of a party, I'm sorry to say, because I think he's a ditherer, a compromiser. I mean, I don't know if other comrades have seen it. I'm going to finish with this, Tina. Thanks for the indulgence. I'm writing an article for next week's paper. Corbyn is in a position where he's asked a straight question. This is this week. Are you an anti-Zionist? Dither. Well, for God's sake, I wouldn't want the leader of our party, call it your party, the JCP party, whatever we call it. I wouldn't want Jeremy, the ditherer, as our leader. Look what he did in the Labour Party. He's a compromiser. So, you know, he's a nice guy, but I wouldn't want him on an executive. Anyway, that's just my rant over.
No, great. important rant, so it should be allowed. Max, did you want to come in to say something at this point?
Yes, please.
Go on, yeah.
Right. Just to answer the question of the comrade earlier about who would actually conduct the election, I mean, I think we should just give it to the Sortition Foundation. That would be my ideal. They know what they're doing. That's their sole meaning for living. So I would do that. One of the things that sort of disappointed me about the responses is that no one's really brought up what I've said about how there should be factional representation on the conference floor. I think that's key. Really, what I'm proposing is sortition plus, not just straight sortition, but there would actually be, our most advanced comrades there to speak, to argue the case, to organise, and so on. I think we find ourselves, we're in a sticky wicket basically, right? We're not the shapers of our own destiny right now, and so what I have put forward is admittedly not the best solution, but it's the one that I think is most likely to work in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I don't think 800,000 people are going to sign up to be registered participants. I really don't. Probably 10,000 maybe, and I would be willing to bet, the very little money that I have in my bank account, that the vast majority of them would be on the organised left. But I know it's a risk, and I'm willing to concede that it's a risk. But I do think it's the only option that we really have right now, because I can't ever see these proto branches being recognised. Knowing some of the people at the top, they're the enemies of democracy. Just on a couple of final points, and then I will end. I think we're all in agreement here about the type of organisation that we actually want to see. For those of you that haven't been reading what I've written, I have written a draft constitution and draft standing orders based on those of the DSA, but applied to the British context. That reminds me of what Comrade Ian said about how local parties should be organised. I personally am dead opposed to them being organised along constituency lines. Look, I think this party should run in elections, but I don't want it to be defined by them. And I think if we organise on a constituency basis, which, let's face it, no one lives in a parliamentary constituency, right? I live in Epsom. Epsom and Youghal is the borough. Epsom and Youghal, the constituency, is an entirely different thing that isn't coterminous with one another. And, people live in commonly defined geographic areas. But yeah, as a final point, I hope we can all unite around a minimum programme for maximum democracy at this conference, because I think we can win it. By being the most consistent and some might say extreme Democrats, we will force everybody else to argue against for why there should be less democracy in the party. And let's face it, no one's going to want to do that because they'll look like a massive dickhead. Solidarity, comrades.
Thank you, Max. Okay, we've got a few more people with their hands up, so we're going to hear from both the speakers again. Howard, please.
Yeah, I agree with the speaker and others that said that it's going to be a delegate meeting for me. And all this argument about sortition is correct in it. It would just be amorphous. But what we're suffering from is lack of information. We know hardly anything about what's going on. So a lot of it's conjecture. But what they're doing, obviously, is building a social democratic party. That being the case, well, what is the purpose of one of these? And it's to ensure, defend and advance the interest of capitalism. But to do that, you have to keep the working class under control, which means preventing militancy of any kind. But to achieve that, you have to have a lot of bureaucratic structures, apparatuses, and so on. So the first thing that their first interest is creating bureaucratic structures. We don't know specifically what they're going to be, but that is what they're going to do. It looks like the only time we're really going to find this out was when this conference takes place. We'll get bits and pieces of other things, but I don't think a lot. So I think what should be done very soon, there should be some kind of national meeting of the left, what you would, for want of a better term, what used to be called the hard left, so that these things can be discussed. But how you get one of those meetings together, it has to be a public meeting, because you're doing these Zooms, but they're achieving certain things, but not a lot. So I think there has to be some kind of public meeting of the left, gathered together. And you have to get the left groups, obviously, but other militants should be involved in it. I think what needs to be done, be prepared for, is that when this conference takes place, we have to have a fringe meeting organized on the same day, the first day. As soon as maybe the night before, but certainly the end of the first day, where a fringe meeting is organized for the left, and that can be done itself by advance notice and people who show an interest in coming to it. And then a first day report on basically all the shenanigans that are going on. And I think that we're not going to achieve a lot, in terms of militant workers achieving much is not going to happen very much on this first conference, I believe. So I think what needs to be demanded is that this first conference is only really a kind of an interim conference. What we need is a full one, not 12 months later, but within 6 months, a proper conference which organized on a delegate basis. So I think that's the kind of thing we have to fight for, because we're just suffering from lack of information. Another thing that has to be recognized, I think, is that from what is coming out, is that these organizers are not at all a homogeneous body. There's quite a few differences in there. Well, in terms of workers being able to fight a bureaucracy, it's good if the bureaucracy is divided. It helps us. So that's going to be a case. But other than that, we don't really know what that heterogeneity is really all about. So I would conclude and say that we have to have some conference to the left, like a public one where people physically meet, not Zooms, where literature can be distributed and so on. And then when the conference comes, we have to have a fringe meeting prepared on the first day, at the end of the first day, to do the kind of things that I've said. And just to repeat, as I started, I believe that it's really going to be a delegate conference. You can't have some averaged out amorphous mass deciding things.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you. Quite a good idea to have a meeting on the same day as the undemocratic conference takes place. Moshe.
Sorry, I joined the meeting quite late, and I want to make a point that perhaps someone has made it before me, but I think it needs to be made, and it's very brief. Main argument against the decision by Sortition in this kind of situation is that it leaves out of the decision-making process the vast majority, all but the small group that is elected by lot. Whereas decision-making by a full conference or by delegation demands of every member to take part either as an elector of the delegate or as a delegate. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Yep, very important point. Thank you, comrade. Ash, please.
Thank you, Tina. Yep. On the question of sortition, I would just say I'd be deeply opposed to that process. And there are reasons for that have been explained and elucidated upon by comrades in great detail. But to me, you're putting in a real shift at the moment, and so are the CPGB. I would direct Jeremy Corbyn to the CPGB YouTube channel and just have a look at some of the videos that have been uploaded from the Communist University and listen to them. Listen to the debates, listen to the fine minutiae that has been debated over, where comrades have also disagreed on, where there have been major divisions, but at the end of it, people shake hands. It's been a very frustrating process catching up with parts of the Communist University, but a vital one. It's foreshadowed, in essence, what your party are going to have to try and achieve. And to me, to pick the names out of a hat is an insult. You're putting in a real shift. You're writing articles. That's where the national structure is coming from for me. I mean, we're going back. I can remember a discussion 3 or 4 years ago here, and I think it was Conrad who made the point. But he was saying with Corbyn, he didn't have the structures underneath him that he would have had in the 1920s through the British Socialist Party and through the CPGB. Well, he's got those structures now. He's got that experience underneath this new launch of a new party. And it isn't elitism. It's through hard graft and experience that comrades, we can democratically vote. That's Jack and Stan, Tina, Ian, the 2 Ians. There's a raft of experience that can represent the CPGB on my behalf on the national platform that I would vote for. And I would want those comrades to be part of the debate and part of the whole process. And that doesn't happen through sortition when it's just randomly picked out of a hat. It promotes alienation. Comrades who have put in a real shift, who have got the experience to take essential contributions forward in relation to policy, will be alienated as a result. And your party need to look at, as well as the administrational professionalism, the CPGB is portraying, the emails that are very well presented and links and everything else. There's a whole structure there that's in place, and he's got the chance to get a lot of backing and support. And as Jack rightly pointed out, to be asked after what we've witnessed in the last 2 years, this isn't 2019 anymore. It's not 2022 anymore. After the 2 years that we've witnessed, and he has a microphone placed in front of him, and he's asked a very simple question, which is akin to, are you an anti-racist? Are you an anti-Nazi? Are you an anti-fascist? Are you an anti-Zionist? You don't dither and insult a whole raft of comrades underneath that have been thrown under the bus over the years between 2017 and 2019. And finally, with sortition, I'd also say that locally, we're dealing with a completely different ballgame, and I'm still processing some of the advice and guidance Tina has printed through the Weekly Worker, because locally it's a minefield. Here, the Socialist Worker Party will be involved in everything, as they are with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. That's anti-Zionist here, by the way. You can't talk about anti-Zionism here. In those circles, you're closed down. I went to a number of their meetings last year, and it's very frustrating because they can be on the front foot with a number of key issues and they're putting boots on the ground. But yet, whenever you bring it forward to an anti-Zionist point of view, you're closed down. My final point on the name would be, like Ian said earlier, I don't want to be looking at what I would call a nebulous non-entity, the People's Party. But if someone like Jack or if someone like Tina or Stan turned around and said, Ash, I think you need to reconsider your views on that, because that's exactly what we need. We need a nebulous non-entity, because we'll do all the organising underneath and we'll bring the socialist communist programme into play behind the nebulous non-entity. I would bow to greater experience. But personally, I would like to see something that is socialist, communist, very clear, the democratic socialists, or something with socialism, something with communism, something in the title that suggests we are socialists, communists. But that would be it for now.
Thank you, Ash. Thanks. You're very convincing. I'll pass this video on to Jeremy Corbyn. I'm sure he'll put us in charge of your party.
I hope so.
Anne.
Yeah, thanks very much. I've listened with a lot of interest to the presentations, and like looking at it as a person who won't be involved because I live in Ireland, but nevertheless, this recognize that this is a very important event, which hopefully will have influence on here in Ireland and other parts of Europe. So to me, like a founding conference is extremely important in putting into place some form of structure or like a forward sign to where you want to go. And I think having sortition, although I can see the problems that Max is pointing to, I think that having sortition immediately creates a division between both the left and you spoke about factions from the left and the ordinary member and the leadership. So in a way, like the left are siloed also and maybe put in too strong a position vis-a-vis the ordinary members who haven't joined any political parties. So I think that a delegate-based structure allows a situation where the left have to be delegated members of parties like the Socialist Worker Party, Socialist Party, CPGB, other left groups. The individuals that are standing have to be delegated. And in a situation where it's a mess and there's very little time, surely the urgency should be put on holding meetings in every constituency, in every locality to pick delegates, even if it's not a perfect situation, having an imperfect democratic structure of delegation, which you say, Max, you agree with after the first conference, having even an imperfect one in place in the conference, even if it means that there are some members who come along as individuals because there hasn't been an opportunity to have a meeting to delegate people, that would be better because they would be going back to form a delegate structure after the conference. That would be, in my view, would be a better way because it would show what way forward you're going, and it would begin on the basis that it should go forward. And I just finally, like an example of this is my study of women in Russia, of the Zhenotdel, the women's organization of the Communist Party of Russia and then the Soviet Union, shows that even in very protracted periods of organization in the run-up to a conference, they were organizing conferences, for instance, of women, working class women or Eastern women, shortly after the revolution. So if they had like a few weeks, they would just go out there and hold the delegate meetings, and delegates would be selected to come forward. So there was a sort of like an energy put to making sure that those events happen. So, and as I understand it, you don't have the list of the people who are signed up, but every branch, every locality needs that in order to hold those meetings, whether they are held by Zoom or in person. Really, like, at this stage, doesn't really matter once they're held and people are selected. Because, and I will finish, but I mean, I think the point that Moshe makes is really important. Having a responsibility, reflecting and representing the people that you're in the organization with is really important. Turning up as just as an individual with no notion of that, I think isn't really helpful to anybody to begin an organization in that way. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah, sorry, comrades, we've got quite a few, well, 3 people still with their hand up, so comrades could keep it short, that would be fantastic. Stan.
Just shaking my head at that. Okay. Yeah, I think Max's skepticism is correct, right? In the sense that he's saying we probably won't get the lists locally, and branches won't be recognised. You're talking about the people at the top, which, as you've said, Max, can be described as scumbags. But I mean, There's better ways of doing it. But anyway, we shouldn't be trusting them, of course. And our approach is to say, build the party now. That's the headline, isn't it? Build the party now. Get branches sorted, not by permission from above, but by getting people together locally. And if you haven't got lists from Zara or Corbyn, then so what? You can still get people together locally, announce that you're a branch and so on. But politics first, organisation follows. We're talking about sortition or a delegate conference and so on, but that's secondary in the sense that the politics is what matters. And in that respect, we have to expose Corbyn, don't we? This 800,000 people have signed up that they're interested because it's Corbyn. People have been asking for Corbyn to announce this party. Is he going to do it or not for a long time, you know? But he's already messed up, hasn't he? He's guilty of back in the anti-Semitism scare, you know, the witch hunt. He's guilty, right? And he was asked the other day about it. So I think it'd be better if we didn't talk about that. You know, well, that's no good. He's got to be exposed for that. His capitulation's got to be exposed. And we do that in the Weekly Worker, don't we? But that's important to do it when you go and talk to people in the local gatherings. Then we have to be on the attack about the politics. His programme, it was for the many, not the few, is a capitalist programme, isn't it? It's not for getting rid of capitalism even. So it's not even a reformist socialism. And we've got to tell that. Now, if this causes problems among the 800,000, well, that's good. So this is an opportunity. I think we should regard the 800,000 people that have signed up as an opportunity, not as a last chance saloon, right? Max, if we're in the last chance saloon, it's the only chance we've got to live, you know, then it's understandable we'll give up principles. But the idea of making decisions without discussion, you know, like you do in a local branch, when you elect delegates, you don't just elect delegates, you also debate policy, debate what you stand for and that. You have to have discussion before decision, don't you, before voting. That's a basic, you know, a principle of democracy, isn't it? Delegates who report back and can be held to account for what they've done. I'm not saying mandate, because some of the unions do that. Unison, we used to do that. You'd have a whole session of instructing delegates what to vote, and they might as well not go, you know, to the conference. So we don't want that. We want freedom for the delegates to make their own minds up and be persuaded. Another thing I'd like to point to for Max is to say that we've said in our motion, we said that we should elect officers from the committee. So locally, if you have a branch committee, you ought not to elect a secretary directly. You should get the secretary or whoever else elected by the committee, so they're recallable without bother, you know. And the same thing, regional or national. So I think that's an important aspect of democracy. Most people, most of the massive 800,000 will believe that the purpose of the party is to win the next election, right? They'll be Corbynite, won't they, in that respect, before they start. Talking about the majority of them. It's wrong to aim for a Corbyn-led government, isn't it? We should, we say that the working class can win a lot in opposition. It can build its strength and it can make gains within capitalism in opposition, and not do what these other left parties, Podemos and Syriza and Rifonzi have done, you know, to go and join in government. So that's wrong. Similarly, in your party, as we fight to build it locally and regionally and so on, without the help of above, you know, then we can gain a lot more by sticking to our principles than by saying, oh, well, we can only get so much, the conference is going to happen, it's going to be controlled from above, so let's have sortition. Sortition doesn't produce revolutionary leadership, does it? Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. John Smithy. Could you switch your video on, comrade? John Smithy. Where are you? There you go. Okay, you can speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The
I agree with Ian Spencer about on a local level having a Labour Party type structure. Regarding the membership list, Carrie Murphy has said she won't release it until at least the end of the year. I have tried locally in Finland to organise some meetings, but without any success. So there'll be no delegate going to the conference from Finland. Where I live, most people, working class people, support reform. I think the thing is with this Your Party is that the sects, the SWP, RCP, SPU, CPB are they're frightened that they've got to get. I saw a video. I think it's Crispin Flintoff, where he interviewed someone from the Socialist Party who just left the Socialist Party to join the Your Party. I think that's what these left groups are worried about, that they're going to lose members, and that's where the weekly worker will come into play in educating these people about these left-wing groups and how awful they are. My view of what will happen with Your Party is that it's going to be like Momentum and the enough organisation done by Mick Lynch and Dave Ward. It'll just fizzle away. It might have 1 million registered supporters, but it don't exist. Where I live, it just don't exist. The thing is, the 3 of the independent MPs who have joined Your Party are landlords, and we've seen recently over the last couple of days the trouble that Angela Rayner has got into with her flat in Brighton, and I think we should, like Stan said, we got to criticise Corbyn. We got to bear in mind that he still accepts his £90,000 a year pay. He's not going to donate the above a worker's wage to the party. And the last thing is I saw him interviewed about where this woman asked him, "Are you an anti-Zionist?" and he wouldn't admit it. So I'm quite pessimistic. I think the only thing is we can intervene in these meetings to build the circulation of the weekly worker by distributing, even if they're free, in these meetings that some people are organising across the country. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Absolutely. Comrades should, if you don't get it in the post with the worker, get in touch and we can send you some to take to your meetings. I suggest I take you first, Jack, and then Max to sum up. So you can have 10 minutes each if you want. You don't have to.
I find it difficult to say hello in 30 minutes. So I'm going to, you just tell me when to shut up, Tina. Okay, just Max, I did mention factions, and that was sort of partially my joke about these participants at the conference carrying around, 3 feet high piles of different documents. I mean, it's great, that you've gone to such trouble, but quite frankly, I mean, I had a comrade making a joke, cruel maybe, but hey, here we go. That what you've sort of drawn up resembles a Heath Robinson contraption. I mean, it's wonderful. I look at it. You've sorted out the hotels, the travel, the childcare, the crowdfunding, the factions, but it won't happen. But the point would be that it might happen, but not in the way that you intend. And that's really what I'm warning against, that you're legitimizing something that will be, how should I put it, not just for the first conference, that become precisely the model. And that is something that we shouldn't do. So what we're saying is, with all its faults, the existing left should be encouraged, prodded, pushed into doing what a lot of them don't want to do. Now, maybe that's hopeless, because we look at the Socialist Party, Spew, they really want a Labour Party Mark II. If you look at the SWP, it wants a loose umbrella. It doesn't want a party. It wants the SWP to grow. I don't know about the RCP. I'm sure it wants the RCP to grow. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. What exactly it's got in mind, I don't know. Either way, that would give us a situation precisely where these comrades have got to argue their politics, argue the sort of way that they're going to vote. Why should you vote for me at a meeting, right? And when you come back from the conference, how did you vote? So what we're talking about is involving the active membership. We don't know what percentage, is going to be active, as many as possible. But that surely is not only the most realistic, it's the most healthy way forward. I saw John Jones, I think it is, comrade, talk about involving the majority. I agree with you. How are you going to involve the majority? Call a meeting, let's have a debate. Is the best way to choose 385 out of 800,000 and leave the rest sitting at home watching their deliberations on Zoom or something? No, it's precisely by saying to them, you shouldn't elect someone from the SWP. Just in terms of what Ash was saying, look, if Jack Conrad and Tina and Stan said you should have a People's Party, I would say you shouldn't trust those bastards. And it's that, no, precisely, it's that sort of healthy skepticism that we want to breed, including amongst the ranks of the SWP. So when the SWP comrades, I don't know if you've looked at their pamphlet, have got such a low ambition, 800,000 people. And what do they want? Something loose. The Spew want to repeat history. It really went well, didn't it, last time round, Hannah? No, it didn't. She wants the trade unions affiliated. What's this? Sharon Graham comes along with her block vote when it comes to the arms trade. Well, no, we don't want that. But we want to have that argument. And precisely by having that argument, maybe, and I'm sure that's the case, the comrades in the SWP, the comrades in Spew, RCP, and including our own comrades need to think. And we're not encouraging them, or we don't want them to trust a leadership blindly. Test them out, question them, and if you find them wanting, get new ones. That's the attitude. Or become a leader yourself. That's the attitude that we're encouraging. Just in terms of this little dispute, look, I don't think we want to fetishize elections. I don't think we want to be fetishizing parliamentary boundaries. I think that we need to basically say to the comrades on the ground, get together as suits you, right? So, we don't want to be looking at some gerrymandered thing with a bit there. You can't be a member of this branch because you are 200 yards out of the boundary or something like that. Get comrades together. It's the comrades on the ground that matter, right? I mean, we surely also would want, out of 800,000, wouldn't we want hospital branches, local council branches? I'm talking about workplace branches. With 800,000 people, that's the sort of thing you can have. So we need to think a little bit more imaginatively. And all I'm thinking of, is mass communist parties, mass social democratic parties of the past. They didn't confine themselves, to just following some constituency thing. Now, I'm not laying it down, but I'm just saying, let's not get fixated, about such questions. My own approach, is that we need tactics. And, there's a time to be rude, there's a time to be polite. And my own approach. I mean, people say Jack Comrade is a rude bastard, but my own approach, for example, to the interim leadership, I know it's an unfortunate phrase and I'm not saying it would be repeated, but I wouldn't go around calling them scumbags. I'm not ticking anyone off for that, you know, but tactically, for example, I'm writing an article this week and I ask comrades, is it the right thing to do? I'm asking Jeremy Corbyn on the question of anti-Semitism, change your mind. Now, there's a danger in that, that I treat him as a Bonapartist figure and I'm the sort of humble, you know, petitioner. But I think, you know, you choose your moment and you choose your tactics. So I include that with the comrades in SPEW and the SWP and the RC. I agree with John Smithy that these are awful organizations, but we need a situation, and this is the social acid. If we're in the same room, if we're meeting each other week by week or fortnightly or monthly or whatever the hell it happens to be, you get to know each other. You might even get to like each other, and you might learn from each other. I could learn from comrades in SPEW. They've had a lot more experience in the trade union movement, you know, than I have. I'm the last person to be going, oh, you don't know what you're talking about in terms of unison elections. I would sit there and listen. I could come to my own opinion, but I think that it works two ways. So tactics, but learn. You know, I've got a lot to learn. We've all got a lot to learn, and we can learn off each other. All I'm saying, though, is in terms we don't want to take the existing leadership for granted. It's not fixed, right? And it is about legitimacy. And I don't think Max is schema. I'm sorry for insulting it, Max. You know, Heath Robinson thing. You know, so Heath Robinson, I don't know if everyone knows the cultural reference, but look it up afterwards. But it's a magnificent image. It's just that it won't happen. And if it does happen, Max, it will be used precisely by this leadership that you don't trust for good reasons, for their reasons. Where if you take the approach that we're advocating, of course, we're not going to dominate it. No, of course not. Maybe the SWP will be all creepy towards Corbyn, but there's a chance if you look at the branches, if you trust the activists to build this organization. And I think then we do have a serious prospect. 800,000 people have expressed their frustration with the existing situation. You know, they're looking for answers. So, you know, it's up to us on the left to provide those answers. And I think together, collectively, with a bit of sorting out, we do have the answers on the left. The right doesn't have the answers. And I don't think, you know, with the best will in the world, I don't think Jeremy or James Schneider or Andrew Murray, I don't think they do have the answer. So anyway, yeah, go for delegates, go for delegate conference. Don't sell the pass to Jeremy and Carrie and James Schneider and the rest of them. Stick with principle. If you believe in a delegate conference, don't sell out on the first conference, stick with a delegate conference, and then we can see what they produce and we can either criticize it or welcome it. And maybe they do go for a delegate conference. I doubt it, but hey, the more we build, the more chance they will go for a delegate conference. Tina's already quoted Feinstein. Let your delegates take your cue from Feinstein.
Thank you very much, Jack. I'm convinced. Max, what about you?
So I just want to clear something up, really. I'm not anti-activist. I do trust the activists. The problem is that those at the top don't. And I want activists to be represented at the conference. That's why I've said, you know, Sortition plus. And I do think that it will be important to have pre-conference debates and discussions and everything like that, which is why I've, you know, said that we need to have in-person and online assemblies. And there needs to be a comprehensive online platform through which motions can be submitted and discussed, and people can propose friendly amendments, and so on and so on and so on. So I'm not against activists playing a role at all. I think it's vital. I think they will inevitably end up shaping that conversation anyway. I also, don't think it should just be 300 odd people. Whatever. I've said that, we should have at least 2,000 people in the room. Because I think that, realistically, you won't find another venue that could fit more than 2,000 people, especially at such short notice. So I think the stuff comrades have raised about exactly what kind of party it would be, there are those that want Labour Party Mark II. I don't. There's those that want a sort of loose federation. Well, those who are arguing for a loose federation aren't really arguing for federalism at all. They're arguing for feudalism, right? They want a coalition of fiefdoms, which small bureaucratic sects and groups of elected officials, or, maybe even in some cases families, will control local organisations and cosplay as participants in mass politics, and that's to be opposed with every fibre of our beings. One of the things I do think will happen, especially if those of us in here and those outside who agree with our sort of organisational proposals will do, that by pushing a minimum programme for maximum democracy in the new party, and especially if we were to win it, I think one of two things would happen to groups like the SWP and SPEW and the RCP and so on. And that's that by participating in organisations that have a vibrant party democracy and internal culture and so on, that would either lead to those activists from the SWP or SPEW or whatever demanding that in their own organisation, in which case we could see a process of democratisation of the bureaucratic sects, or their dissolution. Wouldn't that be exciting to see what came after that? But anyway, look, you've all given me a lot to think about, and I will seriously think about it. I'll probably even write about it. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can do something like this again in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Max. Obviously, weekly work is open for contributions, and we value debate. We welcome debate, and we think it's an integral part of a healthy communist future and culture. Thank you very much, comrades, for joining tonight. Really good debate, really interesting points raised from everybody. So that was a great session. I do agree we need many more discussions like that on the question of your party and the various political questions arising from it. And I'm sure we will be in touch and seeing many of you soon, hopefully next week.